Hare Krishna, World Racer, Sabina and Roger here. Today we're going to read chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Mukundananda.
Yeah. So we are so excited for this version of the Gita, and Sabina found online a free PDF of this version, which is very generous. So you can find the link in the description if you want to read along with us. But before we dive in, of course, we must prepare our minds for this most sacred and beneficial and healing wisdom. So we must seek to know, to understand, to comprehend. And we pray for the guidance and the grace and the insights from Supreme Lord Krishna, that we might be able to be blessed with knowledge of this wisdom. And we thank him so much for leading us to these teachings, by his divine grace and mercy.
Beautiful. Remember, we are still on a huge battlefield right in the middle. Arjuna is receiving the most precious teachings. Arjuna said, O Keshav, I wish to understand what are Prakriti and Purush, and what are Kṣhetra and Kṣhetrajña. I also wish to know what is true knowledge and what is the goal of this knowledge.
Bhagavan Krishna said, O Arjuna, this body is termed as Kṣhetra, the field of activities, and the one who knows this body is called Kṣhetrajña, the knower of the field, by the sages who discern the truth about both. O scion of Bharat, I am also the knower of all the individual fields of activity, the understanding of the body as the field of activities, and the Atman or Bhagavan as the knowers of the field. This I hold to be true knowledge. Listen, and I will explain to you what the field is and what its nature is. I will also explain how change takes place within it, from what it was created, who the knower of the field of activities is, and what his powers are. Great sages have sung the truth about the field and the knower of the field in manifold ways. It has been stated in various Vedic hymns, and especially revealed in the Brahma Sutra, with sound logic and conclusive evidence. The field of activities is composed of the 5 great elements: the ego, the intellect, the unmanifest primordial matter, the 11 senses, 5 knowledge senses, 5 working senses, and mind, and the 5 objects of the senses.
Oh, what are the...
So he's saying that everything, like in material creation, right? So then there's the unmanifest and the manifest, which composes of everything of material nature. And he's saying that everything that basically appears to the knower, which is the ground of the mind, right? So our pure subjective awareness, which is totally non-physical and not matter, like and beyond that, right? So the Atman and the source of our very consciousness itself, everything that appears to that, is part of the field, right? So part of the material nature. So the ego, the intellect, the unmanifest primordial matter. So, like our subtle nature, our subtle energies, and then the 11 senses, right? The knowledge senses. So everything dealing with the mind, the 5 working senses, right? So eyes, ears, nose, taste.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the 5 objects of the senses. So anything out there that we interact with, anything you can touch, see, hear, smell, they're part of the field, right?
Yeah.
So the field basically is the material realm.
Everything that appears to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Desire and aversion, happiness and misery, the body, consciousness, and the will. All these comprise the field and its modifications. Humbleness, freedom from hypocrisy, nonviolence, forgiveness, simplicity, service of the Guru, cleanliness of body and mind, steadfastness and self-control, dispassion toward the object of the senses, absence of egotism, keeping in mind the evils of birth, disease, old age, and death, non-attachment, absence of clinging to spouse, children, home, and so on, even-mindedness amidst desired and undesired events in life, constant and exclusive devotion towards me, and inclination for solitary places, and an aversion for mundane society, constancy in spiritual knowledge, and philosophical pursuit of the absolute truth, all these I declare to be knowledge, and what is contrary to it I call ignorance. Right? So this really reminds me of the Buddhist teachings, right? So renunciation, but he's also saying that you can be in the world and be entangled in all of these affairs, but be renounced in the sense of being devoted to something higher, right? Having an understanding of the knower, of the field, and being more inclined and disposed towards that, and understanding that ultimately our true higher self, like our true nature in reality, is that, right? And then that is what is experiencing the material nature. So in a sense, our ego mind is actually just being experienced. So we're very identified with it, and we're thinking that we are the ego and we are the performer of actions and all of that. But no, our true self is the knower, and it's the observer, and it's the consciousness that, is observing all of that, right? Yeah.
Oh, Krishna. I had a rough day today and yesterday and the day before. And just reading a few lines of the Gita, I just feel the blessings and the grace again.
I shall now reveal to you that which ought to be known, and by knowing which one attains immortality. It is the beginningless Brahman, which lies beyond existence and non-existence. Everywhere are his hands and feet, eyes, heads, and faces. His ears, too, are in all places, for he pervades everything in the universe. So this reminds me of just, the infinite field of consciousness, and then all consciousnesses are part of that one conscious. So then all, like, everybody's head is a part of the one, so all senses are part of his senses. Like, it's infinite. Though he perceives all sense objects, yet he is devoid of the senses. He is unattached to anything, and yet he is the sustainer of all. Although he is without attributes, yet he is the enjoyer of the three modes of material nature, right? So beyond the senses, but, observing all of the senses, right? The very source of, consciousness itself, the observer. He exists outside and inside all living beings, those that are moving and not moving. He is subtle, and hence he is incomprehensible. He is very far, but he is also very near. He is indivisible, yet he appears to be divided amongst living beings. Know the supreme entity to be the sustainer, annihilator, and creator of all beings. So just that divine intelligence, that consciousness is intelligent, right? And it's manifesting as all forms, including us, right? So supreme.
Wow.
He is the source of light in all luminaries, and is entirely beyond the darkness of ignorance. He is knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the goal of knowledge. He dwells within the hearts of all living beings. So I love this line. It's like, he is knowledge. So knowing this is, the true definition of the word knowledge, right? Because everything else is just like, intellectual or book learning or whatever we think of, wisdom and knowledge on the mundane level, is, it's on that level. But higher knowledge is, knowing what is the supreme, right? So that's why he's also the object of knowledge and the goal of knowledge. So knowledge, all knowledge, ultimately points to the ultimate.
And he dwells within the hearts of all living beings.
Yes.
We have to remember that, even the ones that irritate us.
especially those ones. I have thus revealed to you the nature of the field, the meaning of knowledge, and the object of knowledge. Only my devotees can understand this in reality, and by doing so, they attain my divine nature. Yeah, so this appeared on some of our comments in previous chapters of the Gita. We're talking about devotees and what it means to be a devotee, right? So that was debated a little bit, but the conclusion that I have drawn in my capacity on my spiritual unfoldment right now is that a devotee of Krishna is also a devotee of the truth. So even if somebody doesn't know Krishna yet or hasn't even come across the teachings, if you're devoted to the absolute truth, the absolute of the universe, right? The source of absolutely everything, then you are devoted to Krishna because Krishna is that. So one of his devotees, even though he doesn't know Krishna or even know Krishna's form, is still devoted to Krishna by that seeking impulse, right? Know that Prakriti, material nature, and Purush, the individual Atman, are both beginningless. Also know that all transformations of the body and the three modes of nature are produced by material energy, right? So it's the material nature and the individual Atman are both beginningless, right? Because you can't really say, when the universe was created, and we have these theories about the Big Bang, but then we also know that, there could be many Big Bangs and there's no multiverses, right? So you can't really say like when it began and when it was created, because even if it was began, like they say the destruction and then the rebirth, Brahman's day and Brahman's night, and the cycle is on, but ultimately, we're not destroyed in the sense of ultimately, because we're beginningless, and so is the material nature that makes up the universe, because it's part of that conscious field that's indestructible, right? So they're both beginningless. In the matter of creation, the material energy is responsible for cause and effect. In the matter of experiencing happiness and distress, the individual Atman is declared responsible. Yeah, so the Atman is synonymous with, the spark of consciousness, the spark of the divine, so the non-material aspect of our higher selves, right? So that's responsible for, so the emotions, right? So depending on what level of attainment and spiritual realization, your level of consciousness towards, the ultimate, that's probably like more important than anything else towards your state of mental health, right? So your emotions very much are in line with where you're situated, in your consciousness, right? When the Purush, individual Atman, seated in Prakriti, the material energy, desires to enjoy the three gunas, attachment to them becomes the cause of its birth in superior and inferior wombs, right? So these are the modes of material nature, and then so your desires, depending on which guna, right? So you got tamas, rajas, and sattvas. So sattva is, is the higher in the material realm. So this is more like love, higher consciousness, and then the other one is like worldly desires, and then the other ones are like ignorance, right? So depending on, what level of consciousness, once again, you're going to be, attached to those. And then, so if you're higher in sattva, you're going to get, more favorable rebirths. And if you're lower in ignorance, then you're going to have inferior rebirths. Within the body also resides the Supreme Bhagavan. He is said to be the witness, the permitter, the supporter, transcendental enjoyer, the ultimate controller, and the Paramatman, Supreme Atman. Right? So within all of us, there is the Supreme Divine, right? So the knower of the field, right? The witness, the permitter, the supporter. So that's our whole foundation, right? Without the pristine awareness, the consciousness that dwells within us, the pure subjectivity, the ground of the mind, we couldn't say that anything could exist, right? So our very existence as these beings, is basically seated in the ultimate. Like without the ultimate, there wouldn't be anything below the ultimate.
Yeah.
So we're rooted in the divine.
I never heard the permitter. and the supporter. And what does, I heard enjoyer a few times, but I don't understand. What does it mean, the transcendental enjoyer?
Yeah, so just when you're thinking about senses and the objects of the senses, it's like when we taste something that's really, really delicious, there's enjoyment there, right? So yeah, that's tastes good and it's so good, right? So the transcendental enjoyer is the consciousness beyond that. Because you think about creation, and I thought
that enjoys?
Of course. Yeah. I thought about it too. It's like, okay, think about this. Is like, so God made, taste buds, and we can smell beautiful things, and then the fragrance of flowers, right? And like beautiful landscapes. And it's like, why would Krishna have created so many things that are enjoyable, right? Because he knows that they're enjoyable, and then he also enjoys them. And there's, so he's creating things for us to enjoy. And in my mind, he's enjoying that we're enjoying his creation. Because even the taste of delicious foods is created, for our enjoyment, which gives the supreme enjoyer enjoyment, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a very, 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 very compassionate, loving, caring, God who loves us, and he wants us to be happy, and he wants us to seek the truth, right? So when we
enjoy on the way.
When we understand our Creator and God properly, yeah, it's all, divine love, mercy, forgiveness, very much to me, like a father, the supreme, teacher, right? The ultimate guru, right? Mm-hmm. Those who understand the truth about Supreme Atman, the individual Atman, material nature, and the interaction of the three modes of nature will not take birth here again. They will be liberated regardless of their present condition. Some tried to perceive the Supreme Atman within their hearts through meditation, and others tried to do so through the cultivation of knowledge, while still others strive to attain that realization by the path of action. There are still others who are unaware of these spiritual paths, but they hear from others and begin worshipping the Supreme Bhagavan. By such devotion to hearing from saints, they too can gradually cross over the ocean of birth and death. O best of the Bhartas, whatever moving or unmoving being you see in existence, know it to be a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. Right? So once again, you can't have the field. You can't have the material nature without the knower of the material nature. Because the knower of the material nature, now we have the word consciousness, right? Awareness, right? Subjectivity, the capacity to comprehend anything is the knower, right? And then what we experience, what we perceive through all of our senses, is the field, right? So this is very much in, also in Tibetan Buddhism, Dzogchen tradition, right? Where it's very clear. Everything is an appearance to the mind, right? So then it's really pointing to the primacy of mind, right? And the mind would be the knower in this context. Wow. They alone truly see, who perceive the Paramatman, Supreme Atman accompanying the Atman in all beings, and who understand both to be imperishable in this perishable body, right? So our source, the consciousness, is immortal. Those who see Bhagavan as the Supreme Atman equally present everywhere and in all living beings do not degrade themselves by their mind. Therefore, they reach the supreme destination. That's like a key insight there. Just seeing, that's why I love the word namaste so much. It's, the light, the divinity in me recognizes the divinity in you. And if we can keep that, in mind, see Krishna everywhere, see love, God everywhere, then it keeps our mind pure, keeps us from doing, horrible things. Yeah. They alone truly see, who understand that all actions of the body are performed by material nature, while the embodied Atman actually does nothing.
The embodied Atman as the higher self?
Yeah,
the
so
field?
the consciousness.
The knower?
Right? Yeah.
while the embodied actually does nothing. No, it's just being.
It's just being.
It's just isness.
It's the consciousness that allows, the play to take place, right?
Wow.
Yeah, it's the light. So the light of consciousness, is shining, and then material nature arises within it. And it's the material nature that is doing things. So the actions, right? So the ego is part of the material nature. Remember, he said that earlier in this chapter, that the ego is part of the material nature. And you think about it, the ego is identified with body and mind and senses. So it's part of it, right? So the true self, the consciousness beyond the ego mind, is the embodied Atman.
So then, once the ego, died, or is a bit in control, then that's why you're not doing anything. That's why you're beyond doing.
Yeah. So like enlightened beings, there's often said they're not doing anything, they're just being, and things are happening.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
But there's nobody doing anything.
It's not no one doing it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's still things happening. Okay.
Yeah.
Because they are then the embodied Atman, and therefore they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
I love these teachings.
When they see the diverse variety of living beings situated in the same material nature and understand all of them to be born from it, they attain the realization of Brahman. The Supreme Atman is imperishable, without beginning and devoid of any material qualities, O son of Kunti. Although situated within the body, it neither acts nor is tainted by material energy. Space holds everything within it, but being subtle, does not get contaminated by what it holds. Similarly, though its consciousness pervades the body, the Atman is not affected by the attributes of the body. And this is very, 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 very clear for, for anybody judging, others out there and seeing such evil and horrible things in the world. We got to remember that the soul, the Atman, the pure consciousness within all living beings is pure. And it's always pure. Yeah, it's the Maya and the delusion and the ego mind that gets, contaminated. That's totally run by material energy. But the true self, that light of consciousness within is always pure. It's always divine. We're divine creatures. And we got to, keep that in mind. Yeah. No matter what people have done, there's the spark of the divine within all living beings.
And no matter what happened to you, you can experience the most outrageous traumas to body and mind. And yet, the Atman, the higher self, the awareness, there is no scratch, no dent in that. Ever.
No.
Ever.
Yes, that's not affected. Doesn't get contaminated. It's always pure. Just as one sun illumines the entire solar system, so does the individual Atman illumine the entire body with consciousness. And this is so true because we think of our consciousness as just being part of the mind. But then we have to remember that the body is actually contained within our mind. Our mind isn't contained as a small aspect of the brain or in our head region, but it is the very faculty of observation, of awareness itself. And when you think about, so what are we aware of? Well, that awareness is always aware of everything going on in the body. It regulates everything. It's the intelligence that maintains, the heartbeat, all of the circulatory systems, everything. Those who perceive with the eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body and the process of release from material nature attain the supreme destination. Yes.
Let's attain that.
Perceive with the eyes of knowledge. So there's a difference between the body and the knower of the body, right? So there's a difference between consciousness and ego. So ego, body identified, still conscious, but above that, there's a consciousness that, is the knower, right? And then once we realize that, so these are teachings, pointing to the higher self within us, whatever you call it, the Atman, the Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, Krishna consciousness, Brigpa, just so many different words, pointing to the same thing, right? So there's an awareness that is always there, no matter what, right? So the Turiya, right, the fourth state of consciousness. Yeah, all the higher wisdom teachings are pointing to the same thing. Attain the supreme destination. Yes.
And it's effortless, that awareness, right? Being aware of everything at all times.
Yeah. It doesn't take any effort because it's always there. It's one of those things that you don't have to try because it's not within your capacity you have no control over that.
Exactly.
Like, you can't choose to not be aware.
Exactly. Maybe we can be unconscious, right?
Yeah.
But Bentinho gives very quickly access. If you never had that, he always says, try not to be aware of my voice. Try not to be aware of my voice. Try not to be aware of me speaking. And it's the first time for a lot of people that they realize, it's like, whoa, there is something beyond, right? And it's effortless. It's like, it's effortless. Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's always on.
Yeah, let us know if you had the experience.
Yeah.
If you know the Noah, if you
have you met the
have
Noah?
You met the Noah?
Yeah.
Gotten in touch with it. I don't know. It's, how do you express that? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
realize the Noah?
Yeah. Have you tapped into that?
Or not yet?
Yeah. But anyways, it's within all of us. So. And we are being guided and pointed in that direction, and we just need to, let go and surrender to the process and seek the truth. Use this most precious human lifetime. Take in the sacred teachings that are still available on this planet, and they might not be forever.
Kali Yuga.
So now is the time. Now is the time. There's nothing better to do. You can still have your pleasures and your mundane things, but we got to make priorities, right? And spirituality is a necessity for anybody who is willing to understand the highest, what we're doing here. Yeah, and there's no greater teaching than this right here. So thank you so much for joining us. If you like this video, please hit that like button. Of course, subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for joining us. Let us know what you think in the comments, any insights, tidbits, and remember the very most important thing is to raise yourself
and raise the world. Thank you so much, everyone. We see you on chapter 14.
Peace.